You might have noticed that our index.js file is getting big. It simply has too much. It defines the header component, it defines the app component, and it renders the app component to the DOM. These are actually three separate things that needs to go into three separate files. It's a good practice to define a component per file. So I'm going to extract this header component. I'll just cut it from here. And I'm going to introduce a new folder under source. Let's call this folder components. And inside components, we're going to have a file per component. So let's have a header.js. I usually match the name of the component to the name of the file. And in here, I'm going to paste the header.js code. So this header.js is going to be its own module. For other modules to use the header module, we need to export it. So we do export default header. Now, since we're using React here, and also we're actually using React here, remember react.createElement, we need to import React. So let's import React from React. So I think this header component is ready. Now back in index.js, if we actually want to keep the app component here, we need to import the header component in here. So we simply go with import header from /, this is a relative path for the module, components / header. And just by doing this, the index.js file is much shorter, so things would still work here. But let's take an extra step here and actually put the app component into its own module as well. This would include the import header because the only thing that depends on the header component is the app component so far. So I'm going to cut the code from here, create a new file, call this file app.js, paste the code, introduce the dependencies. We do have a dependency on React. This is actually in every component. And the header component now is on the same level, so we don't need to do /components. We can just do /header. And don't forget to export the component so that other files can use it. So now back in index.js, the only dependency that we need is the app component. And we read that from /components/app. Go ahead and test. And things still work the same. So now the index component has one responsibility. It renders a top level component to the DOM. It's much shorter, and we also have a very clear dependency tree. We start with the index component. That component depends on the app component. The app component depends on React and on a header component. The header component only depends on React. So all these dependencies are a lot more clear now that we're using modules. Furthermore, there's some isolation of responsibilities here. So the app component doesn't really care about what the header component does with that message. How the header component is going to display that message, that's the business of the header component itself. So we isolate these responsibilities when we start to introducing components like that.